Thank you so much for joining Dental Marketing Theory, a podcast by Gary Bird. In today's episode, Gary chats with Dr. Paul Goodman, or as you may know him, Dr. Nachos. Dr. Paul is the founder of Dental Nachos and Dentist Job Connect. They chat about going up in the dental industry to issues facing the industry today. As always, please make sure to like, subscribe, share, and leave a comment, as all of those things really help to get the word out about dental marketing theory. Hope you enjoyed today's show.
All right, we are live with Dr. Nacho. Good to have you today.
Thanks, Gary. Love being here. Love what you're doing. Really excited to talk.
Yeah, me too. So one thing that we've been doing on the podcast, and it's been pretty popular, is just sharing people's dental journey, how they got into the dental industry. And I love the story of you and your dad and how that came about and how that really influenced you to who you are today. Would you mind sharing that with us?
Yeah, I like to start, when do you tell your children their dreams are probably not going to come true? So maybe this is audio only, but I like to have a basketball near me at all times. This is an authentic story. I wanted to play for the Philadelphia 76ers. My idol was Dr. J, followed by Charles Barkley. And my dad was such an amazing dad. I really was a good basketball player, excellent three-point shooter, but I did not have the body type or skill to be in the NBA. So at some point, I think my dad had to say that, he stuck with me till age 8, but he was just such a great dad in that he role modeled that he really liked being a dentist. It's not like he loved it and said that he woke up every day saying hooray for another root canal. But the only thing he ever really shared with me, which was really impactful, was he really appreciated being his own boss. And growing up in the 90s in New Jersey, I wanted to be like George Clooney from ER and be a doctor, Tom Cruise from A Few Good Men, or a dentist like my dad. And what I think is just awesome was he never pressured me into doing it. We went to Villanova together back in 1994. They had a 7-year dental program. I'm someone who kind of likes to operate at 2x speed. So I thought, 7 years, I save a whole year. You already get into dental school. So I did a combined 7-year program with Villanova and Penn, which I really enjoyed. During dental school, I really did struggle with some of the challenges like waxing up central incisors and doing some of the artistic stuff. So I wasn't sure if this was totally the career for me. Maybe I should do something different. And my dad was such a great dad. At one point I said, hey, I'm not sure if this is the career for me. He said, listen, Paul, I'll support you in whatever you do. Just want to remind you that, you wanted to be your own boss and that was important to you. I think it's totally normal to feel like you want to stop being in dental school while you're in dental school. I think there's only 5% of people who either could be happy with anything or are dental maniacs that do that. So after dental school, I did a multiple-year general practice residency, one of the best decisions that I've made. I've made decisions. I don't call them bad decisions, Gary, just decisions where there might be opportunities for improvement in the future. But one of the best decisions where I made was doing a multiple-year general practice residency. Got a chance to learn to place and restore implants. I was a chief resident. I was a fellow. Got to manage the residents, learn about a team. I love being part of the hospital system. Along the way, if you want to, I think doctors have just such better training than dentists. Their training model is so much better. Their business system is probably very broken, to some degree. I'm not knowledgeable to talk about that, but it is probably nacho nuts that people are getting $18 to remove a gallbladder. So I'm not going to talk about the payment part, but how they train by following around bigger, stronger doctors. I really enjoyed that in my residency. And then after that, I joined my dad in private practice. He had a partner that they were really role modeled how dentists could get along. Doesn't mean, there's no perfect husbands except me, Gary, but I'm just saying there's no perfect marriages, there's no perfect sibling relationships, there's no perfect founders. But what my dad and his partner did was they got it. They worked together, they cover for emergencies. So I joined their practice. And to not make a long story short, but just to accelerate it, I added specialties like placing implants, bringing in specialists. We acquired 3 other practices. We have another location. My goal was to make dentistry and practice feel like Best Buy, the store from when I was a kid. It's still around where got a 16-year-old buying a CD. I'm 44, so that's, CDs were a thing. Yep. You got a business person buying a flat screen TV. You got a college kid buying a laptop. I figure if my patients had come to one place and keep up the momentum, and we could responsibly provide as much as possible, we could do more patient-centered production. Because I think one of the themes that I think I try to embrace is we run a private practice. If we don't make money, the whole thing shuts down. Yep. We're not funded by the government. And I think dental school makes you feel very weird about money. which they shouldn't. So a patient-centered production, is it good for the patient? Is it productive? Does it make people happier? So I really love implants. So we do a lot of that. And since that time, I can pause at this point and let you jump in and see if you want me to keep going.
Yeah, no, I was gonna. You're heading right down the right track. So what were some of the things that you saw in your dad that you were like, man, I love this and I really want to do it? And what were some of the things that you were like, you know what, I'm not going to do it that way. I'm going to do it this way.
Really, such a good question. So my dad was right out of the movie of the pillar of the community, coaching sports teams, working, 8:30 to 5. I think if my dad was alive now, unfortunately passed away a few years ago, we were great friends. I would say to him, Dad, there's one thing that you lied to me about. And you lied to me and you said that you worked 4 days a week. But I would see you on Saturdays, sometimes working on your paperwork. I would see you on Thursday nights doing the payroll by hand. And you know what people call that, Dad? They call it work. So when dentists say, I work 32 hours a week, or I work 28 hours a week, what I liked about that was a lot of times when he left the office, he was done with the office except for the paperwork. He role modeled that dentistry. He never came home and complained about his career, and I just think that was great. He shared frustrations because, as we talk about, a dental assistant needing to go home to take care of a sick child in the 1980s is no different than the 2022. So there was still challenges to running this team every day. One of the things he did say at the end of his life, his end of his career, because he was such a stable and secure person, he didn't have to say, oh, I had it tougher than you. He said to my brother and I, it has become very complex to run a dental office, very much more so than when I started. You guys have it tougher than I do in this world. And I mean, he was in it with us, whether it was the dental insurance reducing fees, whether it was vendors, that didn't even exist when he started, from website to IT. One of his jokes, him and his partner were really humorous guys. They always took good lunch breaks. I like that. That I like. We don't have good lunch breaks now. No. They would used to go running. Yeah, like they used to go running when they were younger at like a local park, come home and an hour and a half lunch break. Then when they're in their 40s or 50s, they actually went bowling at a bowling alley nearby, and they did a whole article about them, calling them the molar rollers of Pennington. So I just, his work-life balance was excellent. So I like that part of it. I think what I did differently, and he was such a great dad in that he sort of said, this is my son, Paul. He's good with this business stuff. I'm going to support him. I ain't going to do any of it, right? He's not going to look at other practices. He had resources, attorneys and accountants. But when we acquired a practice of a dentist who had a shoulder injury, I went and looked at the practice. I developed a relationship. He would see the patient. So we divide that. But I would say he had good timing to just say that quaint thing of, I take care of my patients and the money comes later. It was a different world then. I will also, his generation and mine has contaminated the world by signing up for a lot of dental insurance plans that we didn't know were going to pay us a lot less. So when him and his partner signed up for spoiled guac PPO or guac PPO, and their fee paid 90% of their fee, why wouldn't you sign up, right? Yeah. Yep. Someone said to me tomorrow, I'll give you 90% for that C course. I said, okay, sure. Actually, I'm 90% for your lecture fee because you do have to handcraft that. Yeah. But if someone said, I'll give you 50%, now I start to think differently. So I think that some of the things that I would say I did want to, he sort of didn't like the business aspect, just wanted to work hard and deliver great care, which is very noble. But there are dentists doing that today, Gary, that are almost going out of business, that are depressed, that just didn't get it. He was such an energetic guy that he went to, his criteria was, I need to work in New Jersey. My mom's family's New Jersey, his family. He went around to a bunch of practices, met the guy that he liked. I give him credit for that. But he picked a great place. Pennington, New Jersey, where we practice, is an affluent community. People value teeth in general. We see a lot of patients that have backgrounds of being accountants, attorneys, work for Bristol Myers Squibb, work for Johnson & Johnson. So location. He picked well. If he took his business, I would say business outlook to a different location, I think it would have been a bigger struggle. So that just kind of give you some context of what I think was
timing,
awesome.
Location. Yeah. And one of the things too that you said that I think is really interesting, I'm reading a business book from the 80s. And one of the things they said, hey, technology's coming and it's going to make everything so much simpler. And I think there are things that it makes it simpler to do, but I also think it makes it way more complex and gives you more choices, which actually
For
makes
sure.
it harder, right? So now you have, instead of just being like, well, yeah, I'll just be on Facebook for social media, it's like, no, I got to be on Twitter, I got to be on Facebook, I got to be on Instagram,
Yes.
I got to be on
It's
TikTok,
the
I got to be on
analysis paralysis plus decision fatigue. And I also share this. So one of my best friends in dental school, Joe Latinelli, we just got through it together. I'm a great memorizer of things. I don't know if that's a skill that really is valuable now. But when we would have to study for histology and anatomy, I could memorize. But I could memorize, foramen ovale, which is a dental term. I also could memorize white cup, blue cup, orange cup, right? So I would actually take the notes and I would rewrite them on a different notebook. And my friends say, "What are you doing? You're wasting time." And I said, "No, me rewriting this puts it into my brain." Now I have a 7-year-old and I use old-fashioned white paper at Dental Nachos because I think sometimes the technology of it's in your phone or it's in your notes, it's great, right? Because I rather carry a notebook, but I also think it's missing some of the impact of putting it into your mind to carry
100%.
it with you later.
Well, I'll give you an example. I remember my home phone number from when I was a kid. I don't
Yeah.
know anybody else's phone number,
I-
right? Like I don't know my wife. Like I barely memorized my wife's phone number. I
Yeah,
don't
but I know
know.
my wife doesn't know mine. I always say if I'm somewhere and you need to give my number, I'm not going to get contacted, right?
Yeah.
So totally. So I think you're spot on in saying technology removes friction, but also creates a lot of complexity. And
Yeah.
even though that sounds like it's inconsistent, I kind of believe that.
Yeah, definitely. Now, you said that you've added, so you have 4 practices now?
Well, we have 2 locations, and dental practices like businesses. People say, I acquire a business. They could acquire a $20 million business or a $200,000 business. So authentically, the largest core practice is the one my dad, his partner, I built with my brother. We have a satellite location that we purchased when a dentist was unfortunately ill. And since that time, we've had 2 practice acquisitions where we've taken the dentist. One time we took the dentist and moved him into the practice. The other time we just acquired the patients. So, I'm a practice broker. So one of my mantras is there's no such thing as a small practice to sell, just small practice brokers, right?
Yeah.
Nacho Socrates. So these are of all different sizes. What I will share is whether you parent 1 day or 7 days a week, the feeling of parenting.
Mm-hmm.
So whether the practice does $300,000 in revenue or $3 million in revenue, it still comes with the same energy of running. So we've had 4 practices, 2 locations.
Got it. And so what were some of the pros and cons of the way that you did that? Because that's a unique path there.
So what I'll share of hopeful value is, I'm a big, huge fan of Mark Costas. We're friends, friends. I've been part of DSN. The entrepreneurial gene in dentists is pretty strong. Okay, stronger than people think. And don't buy a second practice until you have your first practice running on all cylinders. Interestingly, at the time when we bought the second practice, we did have that, right? Because we had my dad's partner was there, my dad was live, my brother was there, and we needed more dental care for my brother to do. So that was a good reason. Too often people have a good practice or a great practice, say, I want to acquire this other one, if you don't have the dentist. So my message is make sure you have the dentist chefs to help you do the chefing in these places, because just having a practice, like having our satellite practice, and I'm just going to use a round number, if nobody walked into that practice for a full month, probably would still cost us close to $20,000 to keep it open. So if you buy a practice that you're not able to even have a dentist in there doing some dentistry. So I think my message is make sure you have the relationship with dentist to expand. In this specific time, I had my brother. Since that time, we've hired general dental associates, we've had specialists, but work on your talking to dentist skill set, right? If that's passing the ball or communicating, work on your dentist skill sets. And then secondly, I don't know if you ever saw this movie, The Breakup, Gary, but it was one of my favorite movies where Vince Vaughn is like, they're breaking up with Jennifer Aniston, and she goes, I just want you to want to do the dishes. And he's like, who wants to want to do the dishes, right? And it was a funny play on words. Make sure you really want to have this life where I'm a big Gary Vaynerchuk fan. And he's like, people are like, when do you stop worrying about your business? He's like, easy. When do you stop worrying about your kids? Never. That's him. That's his brilliant advice.
Yeah.
So when you own a business, you're going to worry about it. You're going to think about it. You're going to have concerns about it. When you own a dental practice that doesn't produce revenue unless like 6 people show up, make sure you want to be the conductor or I'm a big fan of the movie, The Greatest Showman. You want to run another dental circus. That's what I would share. Talk with a consultant, talk with an advisor, talk with people who do it. Talk with me. Anyone could just talk with me too, because there's really good parts to it and really challenging parts.
Yeah, that's one of the things that I've learned in my business is that I have to be consumed with the culture, the bigger, especially the bigger that we get, like
Yeah.
how people are feeling and how their lives are going impact the business greatly. It's so important. So that's like my chief thing is how's everybody doing? How are you feeling? How's your life? And
Yeah,
sometimes people have things that hit their life that are non-work related. I have no
for
control over
sure.
it, but it still impacts work because there's
Oh,
harmony between the work and there's no, we don't just clock in and then clock out and then it's done.
yes.
It impacts work. So knowing about, oh, hey, you're struggling with this, or hey, you're trying to buy a house. That's awesome. Or hey, your kids have been sick, like you said. I think is so impactful to being able to create a business. And one of the things you said there was it's almost like running a restaurant. And I know when you were a
Yeah.
kid, you worked in a restaurant. What did you learn from that, and how has that impacted your business approach?
That was singly one of the most. So I have I'm noticed for doing a lot of how to talk to patients in patient-friendly terms. I love Philadelphia where I live. In Philadelphia, Denzel Washington is constantly saying, explain it to me like I'm a 4-year-old. I think, unfortunately, in dental school, we get taught at this level that only dentists can understand.
Yeah.
Then you start saying these words to patients like hopeless virgin failure. And like, well, that's not a very nice thing to say.
Get a
So,
prophy.
yeah, being a server taught me to multitask, taught me that goodish is better than perfect, right? I know this is now. So what I'll share with, I would never want to take out spoiled food. I would never want someone to not have good dental care or good filling, but the obsession with making it as perfect as possible can come at the expense of your sanity. Also, I mean, I do a lot of speaking. I start off with this way. I say, hey, everybody, if I was going to cut your hair, who wants me to do the best haircut possible? The best haircut possible. Every hand goes up. And I go, okay, who wants me to take 7 hours? They all go down. I said, well, that's dentistry. How do you do the best job possible in the time that you have? So being a restaurant server helped me with that, dealing with all different types of people. The concept of side work at restaurants is, filling the ketchups, doing the salt and peppers, doing the chairs, people working as a team. I think at restaurants, there's general managers, there's floor managers. You get used to getting feedback. That's not always comfortable.
Mm-hmm.
I think sometimes, being able to give feedback and receive feedback, we call it, I try to be like a pretty G-rated person, Gary, but at our dental office, our Dental Nachos group, I think you have to have as many FUCs as possible to grow. Friendly, uncomfortable conversations, right?
Yep.
Friendly, uncomfortable conversations. And my dad, who didn't have any training in this, he would have a hygienist show up kind of late 15 times and then explode the 16th time. And I just want to say, in the history of leadership, that's worked 0 times.
Yeah.
That's worked never times,
That's
right?
awesome.
So I think, I've done a ton. I've gotten coaches. I've had people come in. I've kindly annoyed my dad to spend money on this when he didn't want to spend money on it. And he was glad he did. I think restaurants are a system, a team. They know they're playing a game every night. They know things are going to go off script and they're just prepared for it.
Yeah.
And that's helped me in the dental world.
Yeah. So I've had experiences where someone on a dental team, right, at a dental office will send in some pictures of a smile and say, hey, put this picture on our website. And I look at it and I'm like, oh, their smile's beautiful. Great job, doc. And I put it up on the website and the doctor's like, I cannot believe you posted that. Can you not tell that all these words that I have no idea what he's talking about, right? And he's just like, this was not right. And and I'm just like, look, okay, no one else can tell that. You are literally the only person in the world. No one that's going to visit this website can see that except for you and maybe a couple other dentists. And the patient was happy too, right? The patient was like, oh, I'm so happy. So it's just an interesting world of that perfection of getting your dentistry to a point where literally other people can't even see it.
Right.
Now, the other side of that is one of the things that I love about restaurants is it's like honest consumerism, right? So there is no one tries to fluffy code it, right? So it's like, okay, is the food good? Yes or no?
Yeah.
It's simple, right? Are they fast? Right? Because we don't want to wait 4 hours, to your point.
Yeah.
And then also the servers actually have to be semi-nice. Now, some places can get away with being a little bit rude, or that's like their stick, right? Or whatever. But for the most part, the servers have to treat you well.
Yeah.
And we have no problem, zero problem if somebody's not checking those 3 boxes to let the whole world know. But sometimes we don't look at our own business that way, or sometimes we don't look at dentistry that way because it is medical, right? Like I get it that it's not a restaurant, but patients want that consumerism. So what is your mindset on consumerism when it comes to your business or even other dentist business?
I mean, I love this theme, and I'll cover a couple of things. One, no matter how good I like to separate the behavior and action from the person. So whether you're a marketer, whether you're a dentist, whether you're Dental Nachos, no matter how good you are at what you do, someone is going to hate what you do. You have to embrace that.
Yep.
I will use a couple examples from my personal life at this time. There's a current movie that's wonderful called Encanto. We've watched it 10 times. It is written by the world treasure Lin-Manuel Miranda. He's also the one who has written Hamilton. If you read the reviews of those movies, someone does not like them. Most people do, some don't. I put those in the notches. So for a reverse thing, do not overvalue, it's a Gary B thing, small bits of negative criticism, because it's impossible for everyone to like you, and you wouldn't want them to. If we're eating a plate of nachos, and Gary, I say, these are great, and you think they're spicy, same nachos, I like them, you don't. Now, if you consistently get feedback about a problem, the manager at your office is rude,
or the chips are soggy or whatever.
The chips are soggy. Dig into it, to use a nacho thing, and see what you can fix before you fire, right? People are talking about firing all the time. I can barely get people to work with me. I try to work, like I have this E-Myth Revisited book near me at all times, and I have the Checklist Manifesto. And right in the E-Myth Revisited, it talks about get sort of the least trained people possible to work with you productively, not in a mean way, but like if I had to show up at your organization tomorrow, Gary, and people are like, Paul doesn't freaking know anything about Facebook ads, it'd be like, but he's working here, let's get him competent. So I try to say, hey, if we get feedback, let's see what we can fix before we fire. And that's what I strive to do with my team, make them feel supported, make them feel like I have their back, but also be willing to have friendly, uncomfortable conversations. You know, someone gets seated 5 minutes late for their crown. It's not as big a deal as if our sterilizer's not working right. That's an enormous deal. Yeah. I think a lot of leaders don't prioritize their intensity. And by intensity, means stress. I think a lot of times they make their team feel just as mad as if there's a Post-it on the floor as if they forgot to get an implant for a case. I think that's why their team gets confused, and I strive not to do that with mine.
Yeah, it's easy to do that too when you're, especially if you're. I see dentists struggle with this because they're like they're a full-time dentist and they're a fractional CEO, and so when you come up out of doing dentistry, the Post-its on the floor, like how are you going to respond? One of the things that I try to remind our team about is like, guys, it's totally good. We're going to fail, and guess what? We do dental marketing. We're not saving the world. We're not, you know what I mean? Like worst case scenario, someone misses their, new patient count by something, by a couple or something like that. And that's not to say we don't want to do an awesome job, but we have to keep in context of what we're doing. Even dentistry, one thing that I've learned across the world is a lot of people don't look at dentistry the way that Americans do, right? Like they look at it as like liposuction, like cosmetic surgery, right? And so they're like, you're going to get Invisalign? Why would you do that? Like that's just extra money, or like that doesn't even make sense to
them.
Do
you read David Sedaris? I just want to jump. Do you read David Sedaris at all? He's very funny. So my mom and I were very close, and unfortunately she died when I was 20, but we had same humor. So there's a guy named Dave Barry. He's still alive. He was a comedy writer. He's hilarious. David Sedaris is kind of an modern day version of him, but he lives part of the time in England, part of the time in the US. He goes to periodontist in both. And one time when he was in England, he said to his periodontist, I want my teeth to look better. I want my teeth to look better. And the periodontist goes, why would you want that from England? He goes, well, for starters, I can floss with the sash of my bathrobe, right? So, I mean, so like what you're saying is an important point, because people's mindset is so different in different places. Raving Fans is another book that I love. You don't have to be everybody's hero at all the times. And people are going to come in and out of your life personally and professionally. So it doesn't mean not to change, but I think dentists are and people, they get one bad review, they want to change the thing. Someone goes, I don't like the cancellation policy at Pennington Dental Associates. One person, I'm not changing. 10 people, I'm not changing. 100 people, okay. Well, now I'm annoying too many people. I just think you drive yourself totally nacho nuts if you're always trying to change to make people happy when you don't live inside their head.
Yeah, 100%. Now, how did you go? So obviously owning a dental practice is one thing. You became a dentist. That's a very clear path for me of why you did that. Why in the world did you start this group, Dental Nachos? I know you did it in 2017.
What I think is fun and funny about this, I'll tell this story. So there's a comedian, Sebastian Maniscalco. He's one of my favorite. I've actually interacted with him before he was huge and famous. He did Vince Vaughn's Wild West comedy tour, where Vince Vaughn put 4 comedians in a trailer, put them around the country. I saw it, thought it was hilarious. Movie bomb. Sebastian was one of those people. So a lot of times when you get noticed, people go, "Oh, did you just start doing this thing?" I go, "No, I've been doing this forever." So after I graduated from my residency, I wanted to create a group. I call it the Rising Dentist Study Club. Our mission was, if we can get to know each other earlier in our careers, maybe we would hate each other less when we get older. That was the whole mission. I got speakers. It was above a bar that I worked at. I got sponsors to bring in food. And all I wanted dentists to do, and teams and students, was to meet each other, be friendly, because I thought dentists are people too. And the stuff my dad told me about, where dentists don't like each other, they're always insecure, they're competing. So my goal was to create a community in Philadelphia where dentists could feel like they were supported. So I was well known from 2005 to 2017 in Philadelphia. I spoke on
So that was before like social media and all that stuff,
before social
right?
media.
Yeah.
February 2017 was the start of Dental Nachos. So during that time, if you're a dentist in Philadelphia and you needed an associate, they go, "Oh, call Paul Goodman. He knows," right? So people call me on my Nokia. Remember the Nokia, right?
Yeah.
I have to pick it up. You couldn't even text back then. So I said, so I was doing this, but over that time, I started a family. I had multiple practices. I always kind of kept this one meeting a year on the side, which I loved. I did at the Philly Stadium once. I do it at Maggiano's. And it was just this nice, fun, one-time thing where I'd get sponsors. Then in 2017, I would I was on Facebook groups. I was contributing, all these different groups, the business of dentistry, things like that. And I say, no, I want to make my own group, kind of opinionated. I know sometimes people don't always get me. Some people find me annoying and then they like me later. I do want to share, this is funny from social media. One of my current friends now, Gary, I spoke at this meeting called the Voices of Dentistry in 2018. And I spoke on practice transitions and all this stuff. And I can do like 3 things well. And I've done a lot of speaking courses. So I know the techniques, right? The nicest thing people tell me is, "You're very natural up there." I'm like, "It's not natural, it's techniques." So these 2 people came up to me at the end and said, "Hey, Paul, we thought we were going to hate you, but we really like you." And I go, "Could you have left off that beginning part?" And they said, "Why?" They said, "Because the stuff you post on social media annoys me, but now I know you're trying to help people." So I know, one of my favorite books, To Sell is Human by Daniel Pink, is the difference between agitation and irritation. I shoot for agitation. Sometimes it irritates people. I can't control that. But I started this group in 2017, thought it'd be a couple hundred people talking about implants and practice management. My awesome wife, Mrs. Nacho, she loves that name, helped me come up with the name. The nacho metaphor is that I'm a broker, I'm a speaker, I'm a dentist. I do a lot of different things.
A little bit of
I
everything.
do authentically love nachos. I love Mexican food. There's a lot of toppings. You're the marketing genius, not me, but I picked something, Gary, which was like the golden retriever puppy of appetizers. Because when the group started, remember, think back to 2017. Dentists didn't really know how to use Facebook. Most people didn't know how to use Facebook. So when they saw this group, Dental Nachos, with 500 people, they were just posting pictures of the nachos they were eating, which just had the unintended consequences of people stopping their scroll and looking at it.
Yep.
And I would be in Philadelphia and my phone would buzz in my pocket. Someone who I know would go, "Hey, Paul, I texted you a picture of my nachos. I don't think they're worthy of the group, but I just wanted you to know I was eating them." And I said, "That is cool, you crazy person. Put them on the group. There's no criteria." So that was the metaphor. And then also, as it's evolved, nachos are meant to be shared. Nachos definitely get messy. You rarely order them by yourself, right? So that's been the theme of it. And it's grown now. We just had 37,000 members yesterday. It's for everybody, not just dentists. That's my vibe. There are groups out there that are dentists only, but it's industry professionals, students. I remember in the beginning of Facebook, and Facebook, you could add a lot of people to Facebook groups and it would just be in the group, right?
Yeah.
So I would sometimes go and be like, "Oh, these are my friends from dental school. Click, click, click. These are my resident friends." And I clicked on one of my wife's friends by accident. And I sent her a message. I go, "Oh, sorry, I didn't mean to add you. Like, I don't know how to remove you." And she goes, "No, I kind of like watching it and reading it." So I thought it was funny where it's kind of a group for all. Mr. Rogers' neighborhood of dentistry definitely has a business component. We have sponsors in the group, like a free park. Parks you can walk around the park, but they have people selling stuff around the park. And I've really enjoyed running this, Frankenstein I've created. Sometimes
That's awesome.
I love it. Sometimes I'm like, all this is free, everyone. You're so mad about free stuff, right?
There's people people do battle in there a little bit, and I see you playing referee. You do great. What I really appreciate about you is that I can see what you're trying to do, right? You're trying to get people to get along and to be okay with, we don't agree with each other, but that's okay. Like, we can actually still live in the world where I don't want to kill you and you don't want to kill me.
Yes.
It's interesting. I can only imagine how you explain that to people who aren't in the dental world, because I'll have people come to me and they'll be like, "What do you do?" Digital marketing. "Oh, really? What kind?"
Yeah.
For dentist. What? And like, it's just like trying to explain it and to explain the
Well,
culture.
I want to help you in this moment because you have the sweatshirt you're wearing, like I'm wearing. So once you put on nacho swag, okay, we have a great nacho swag sponsor. It's great. It's comfortable. It doesn't matter if you're 7 or 70. Someone is going to ask you a question about
I've
it.
I've already gotten several questions. Yeah, so I want to hear this.
So someone goes, one of my opening things was I'm walking down Broad Street in Philadelphia. A stranger shouts from behind me, "Hey, you got to be ready for anything in Philadelphia, right?" I turn around as a 50-ish-year-old woman with a confused look on her face who said, "What is Dental Nachos?" So when someone says this to you or your listeners say, "Oh, that's a great question." A lot of people ask me that. That's one of my tips. People ask you weird questions. And this is one I've created. I've named my group. My company's named after an appetizer. It's 100% on me, right? So I say to her, Dental Nachos is like a Mr. Rogers neighborhood for dentists. You may not realize this, but your dentist is often super nice to patients. They're good at this, but not as great as interacting with other dentists. So we get together in this Mr. Rogers community. We talk about our challenges, be friends, learn to enhance our business. And that's what we do. And she goes, "I like that." I said, "You should tell your dentist about it." One of my marketing things to get older dentists, Gary, is interesting, is to tell patients to tell their dentist about it. Because I was just on a call this morning where I said, and this is kind of a good point to make about Dental Nachos and dentists. My dad practiced for 41 years. He had a very great practice, comfortable living, same thing, sent 3 kids to college, did all this stuff, right? He did not need to use email for his business.
Wow.
At no point was using an email important to him or necessary. So dentists, even today, using LinkedIn, TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, kind of a luxury, right? Now I have things saying, you should use an Instagram account. But one of the things of the 50-plus-year-old generation, I was on Tea with Gary Vee, and I asked him this. I was like, "Gary, thanks for," it was one of the best moments of the pandemic for me. He goes, he had some creative things because how do you reach this 50-plus-year-old generation? And he goes, "Why do you need them?" He goes, "Why do you need these people? Why don't you just stick with the young people?" I said, "Because in the circle of dental life, finding a job, buying a practice, hiring a dentist, selling your practice, the 62-year-old is going to care a lot when he or she has to sell their practice.
Yep.
So I need them to get to pay attention now because they're missing out on a really good opportunity to feel better. And when they need to do one of these life events, right? Imagine you sell your house and you didn't know how to have anyone live in it and you had to go to San Francisco. That would be a big problem." So that's how I carrot them. And,
and what did he say? What did he say to do? He said Facebook?
He said, he has creative things. I mean, he said, one, maybe try to work on some type of fun referral thing, some direct mail, which we've done, something with like a very Gary Vee thing, like a big, half-size postcard that says like, "Are you looking to make the next step? Or are you looking to hang up the handpiece? Text here." I've gotten community from him. So he said direct mail with a catchy thing, maybe some referral type program. We do some ground stuff where we meet them. I also go to the team. I try to get the team to tell their dentist about it. But now in that moment on the street where you say it's a Mr. Rogers neighborhood for dentists to be nicer to each other, learn, enhance their business, tell your dentist about it. That's just an easy way. I had a friend, Dr. Tom Grass, who's great. He was fishing. I don't know what kind of scenario where like someone was looking down and he was in the boots fishing and he had the t-shirt on and someone screamed down to him, "What is Dental Nachos?" I just thought that was such a funny idea.
I've worn mine a couple of times and people are just like, what are you wearing? Like, I don't get it. Like, so it does. It's a great conversation starter. Genius from a marketing perspective. All right. So there's 2 things that first of all, the link for Dental Nachos is going to be down below. So if you guys want to jump in that group, please do that. It's awesome. If you are in the dental industry in any way, please make sure that you take a look at that. So one of the things I see you rant about 2 things. There's 2 things that when it gets dropped in Dental Nachos, I just see you go 120 miles an hour on each of them. One of them is dental insurance, which you've already touched on.
Yeah.
And the other one is dental school. So can you kind of give me your take of where we're at with the dental school and what your beef is with the current structure of what we're facing?
So I love this question. So one of my favorite movies is The Truman Show. And The Truman Show, one time when Laura Linney is like holding up the Folgers, it's like product placement. And Truman is like, "What are you doing?" Right? Because the whole thing's kind of this scam. So I love speaking, and pre-pandemic, I would fly around frequently speaking. So I was flying across the country and I bought this book called The Rooster Bar by John Grisham. It's a good book, like John Grisham. This was the story of the book. It was a law school that would get law students to take out a lot of debt and they wouldn't have jobs for them when they finished. So it was basically a scam law school. It's a good book. I feel dental school is moving towards that for these reasons. The cost of dental school has tripled since I've graduated, and no one can tell me what they're adding to the experience. And in fact, I think they're subtracting it. So if we use this basketball, and I graduated and every dentist from the beginning of time, my dad included, said, graduate from dental school, you'll figure more out later, get your degree, figure more out later. But my dad's generation of dentists, they would teach better fundamentals. General dentistry is about fillings, crowns, simple extractions, treatment planning. One of the big problems is, I believe, and every team before the pandemic would get this, if you have 10 people working for you and you buy one pizza for the party, 2 people aren't going to get a piece, and probably 3 because the first person's going to take 2, right? So the most simple way of putting it to you, Gary, is they are taking more students than they have the clinical experience to train those students in. And then they shuffle them through and they say, you'll figure it out later. And it's very sad and very scammy because figuring out in the real world of dentisting is impossible. You can build on your skills, but I don't believe they're teaching the fundamental skills for dentists to survive and thrive. I hire associates. I actually require GPR AGD. So I believe that students are unfortunately under a misconception that the skills that they've learned in dental school, not all, but too many, will help them survive and thrive. The cost itself, I'm not an economist, but the fact that it's 3 times as expensive and the government is pretty much funding all of this. If I had a friend that would let me charge unlimited amounts for CE, I guess I would charge unlimited. You could take out a CE loan for Nacho Flicks, and I kept raising the price. I would say, okay, pay it back later. So I believe that the cost, and I also believe that dentist authenticity, I'm a JBN type guy, just be nice, which means like, don't yell at people if they do a PFM crown and you do a zirconia one, but JBR is just be real. Running a dental practice is very intense. There's a tremendous amount of stress that comes with it. That is healthy stress, healthy intensity, and also toxic intensity. So what would be great is if dental schools were more authentic about what it feels to work like in the real world of dentistry, so they get applicants that really want that. We have companies, both of us, and not people have worked for us and said, this is not the pace for me. This is not the intensity, but all they do is stop working for us and move on. They might do, one of my OG marketing people, she moved on to this awesome fashion brand, which is what she wanted to do. I think she gets paid to wear outfits. I'm happy for it, right?
Yeah. Yeah, and how do you compete with that, right? Like, how do you compete with that? Is it like,
but she didn't go to Dental Nachos University for $500,000 to get this job and then figure out, oh man, work around Paul is quite intense. And I don't know if I want to deal with dentists. So that is my awareness is my thing. I'm trying to get the message back to the people as early as possible to make decisions. I am not a parenting expert, and I'll just use this as there's people who have kids who probably should not have had kids, but people thought, oh, everybody has kids, right? And maybe if someone sat them down or maybe someone took them to hang out with a bunch of 3-year-olds, they would say, this is not the life for me. And I know that's emotionally dramatic example, but just like being a chef at a busy restaurant, go see what it's like. See how many you do. So I think, and I actually think, unfortunately, Gary, the personality type that gets you into dental school, being really smart at book stuff, being very detail oriented, is not the personality that also goes well with running a business every day. So that is my gripe. Dental insurance, reducing their fees, delivering less, paying. It's like eating ice cream on the treadmill. I always say that. Like, dental insurance is paying us less than what they did 10 years ago, some of them. And dental school is not delivering a degree that's usable for enough.
So I heard 3 things there. So it's the economics of it doesn't make sense. There's the educational portion of it of like, hey, we're being underserved of what we're trying to accomplish. And then there's the business side of it, right? Which is like a whole separate component. So the economy side, the economic side of it, totally agree with you. I think that's universal, right? Like there's people graduating from college right now that are graduating with degrees that are literally worthless. And it's some crazy amount of people don't go into the career that they get a certificate for, right? Yeah. So I think fundamentally schools are broken from that standpoint. And a lot of it has to do with government giving lots of money, and that increases prices and inflate, it creates like an artificial inflation in there. So I totally agree with you on that one. On the education side, that's obviously, you're a dentist, so you see that, right? On the business side, the thing that I find interesting about the business side is, and it goes kind of almost back to the economics of the school, is where I don't think the schools have the capability to teach the business side. I just don't think they do. And if they did, if they had the person on staff that knew how to teach the business side, they would go start a business because they would make way more money than working in a school. Yeah. Right. Like, so it's like, it's that catch-22 where the entrepreneur spirit right now, what I'm seeing is like, it moves so much faster than any school could keep up with. YouTube can't even keep up with it, right?
Yeah,
Like the stuff that was
totally.
made 10 years ago on YouTube, can't use it anymore. So I'm man, it's almost like it's really hard to come up with a fix. I would love your feedback on this. I did a podcast with the dean of UCLA.
Oh, cool.
And he's really, what he's trying to build, he's trying to build a program, and he did it at Michigan as well, where the students, when they're in dental school, that they actually get to partner with either a DSO or a private practice like yourself and do dentistry and learn from like a mentorship program, not just the dentistry, but also the business side of it. Do you think that's something like that obviously that doesn't solve the economic side of it. Is that going to solve the business side of it? Or is there more complex than that?
One of my favorite, Kristen Bell and Jay Shetty did an awesome podcast. And, I like both of them very much. And, 0.1% better by Kristen Bell and everybody. So I think I applaud anything that's making things 0.1 or 1% better. And I think that is awesome that this dean has this idea. I think that in some ways, if I had to fit into my wedding suit in the next 30 days, I would have to change a lot. And it probably wouldn't be healthy or safe for me to make that happen for me. If I had to fit into my wedding suit a year from now, I could do it in a healthy and safe way. I think there's a lack of awareness for how difficult and challenging the real world of dentistry is morale-wise, not only money-wise. And I think business is just another name for leadership and another name for communication. And I think not learning about it early enough is a problem. So I think this is a great idea. People have offered to be mentors. It's, I'm an ABC person, always be connecting, always be caring. So I've been asked to do this with Dental Nachos. It's just that any good idea needs money, whether you want to build houses for Habit. I know people are like, you don't need money to do good stuff. Like, who buys the hammers for Habitat for Humanity, right?
Yeah.
Even if you go get them donated, you have to pay someone to do the donation. So any good idea needs some funding. So I think anybody who wants to really solve this, could be a group, is going to have to jump in with some funding. I will ask Gary. Oh, sorry. Go ahead. You go first. Sorry.
No, I was going to say, if I gave you $1 trillion and put you in charge of all the colleges, what would you do?
If we stick with dental schools for the
just dental
time
school,
being,
just dental school.
Because I don't know enough about the industry. If we stick with that, I would infuse how to talk to people and patients as early as possible. A whole curriculum part on that. I would definitely take the idea from the dean and match up people with people just a few years beyond them. I do want to share that if you're 28 years old and want to date, and you talk to your grandmom about dating, while she might have some very classic things, put your best foot forward, show up on time, she's probably not going to tell you how to use Bumble, right? Probably not. That's okay.
Probably not what emojis to use and not use and stuff like that. So
what I'm saying is, I think there's an overvaluing mentorship can also be someone just 5 years down the road. Mentorship could be by committee. I wrote an article, Are You My Mentor? Like that book, Are You My Mother? And I said mentorship is by committee. So I would really work hard on creating a framework of dentists who want to give back, which I think they do, and just spending time creating an organization that was mentorship, morale, and money focused. The 3 M's I talk about for a job. Mm-hmm. What's this job like morale-wise? First, morale-wise. What's this job like money-wise? Second, what's this job like mentorship? Because mentorship sounds great, but if you're not getting paid, you can't pay your rent, right? So when someone goes, I'm going to be mentored by my family dentist, what's he going to pay you? Nothing. I go, well, are you going to be able to pay rent? So I think that's what I would do for the dental industry. If you can get someone to give me, I don't even know if I need $1 trillion, maybe just $1 billion.
$1 billion. Yeah. Yeah. It's interesting because now it's, as we talked about earlier, there's even more choices. So I worked with, I did a podcast with Jacob Berger, and he was a barber, went to dental school, cool. Came out of school with, I think, $500,000 in debt. It was somewhere in there after interest and everything. And then Heartland picked him up and said, we'll open up a brand new de novo and we'll build it around you. And you can, they set up that whole structure, and he's super excited about it, doing really, really well now. He's been in for several years. So that's like a whole new thing, right? Like that wasn't available a while back. And then you have people who go in and become associates and become partners with those practices. And then you have people who just come out and do it themselves. And then some people don't want to be in the business side of it, right? So
yeah,
I think
sure.
I think there's
with women in dentistry, which is awesome. And I have actually, in an anecdotal way, a lot of times female dentists are much more liked than male dentists. In some ways, anecdotal. No one write angry reviews.
No, from a marketing standpoint, it's easier to market a female.
Yeah. So, but they also, these challenges. I always say one of my opening lines for one of my talks to try to get people interested, Gary, is sometimes the best thing to happen to someone else is one of the worst things to happen to you. And then I pause and people go, what's this thing? Okay, watch this. Hi, Dr. Paul. My name's Dr. Lisa. I work with you at your office. I've been there for 5 years. I run your satellite practice, and I am going to have a baby in 9 months. Do I just say, hooray, Dr. Lisa? I say, great, Lisa. Who's going to run this practice, right? So what I think we can authentically talk about is there's so many different creative ways to be successful, from DSOs to private practice. Dentists yell against the reality. I got a daughter who wakes up in the morning and says, can I watch your phone? And when people say, oh, that's terrible for kids, we're past it. We got to manage screens with kids. We have to manage DSOs and in the space. If you can't, unless you have a Back to the Future time machine and go back and not let them into dentistry, they're here. So we may as well figure out how to make this as successful as possible, with the understanding that there's the opportunity for boutique marketing agencies and cookie cutter ones. There's an opportunity for Chipotle and Alves, which is
it's an abundance mindset where it blows my mind. 40% of Americans don't even go to the dentist.
Right. Yes, I know.
So we could double the amount of dentists that we have, and then we could start saying, oh, maybe not everybody can be successful. We're kind of cutting each other's throat now. Yeah. There is plenty of business for everybody, for every single dentist in America to be uber successful and hit all of their goals.
That's so on point. And also, when someone says, why do these older dentists sell their practice to a DSO? They're ruining dentistry. Any business owner, A, are you going to turn down the most money you can get? B, do you have the foresight or even know what's going to happen 20 years from now? You don't. So you have to make decisions that are comfortable for you. There are dentists who refuse to sell DSOs. There's dentists who see both, and there's only those that sell DSOs. If someone says, I'm going to come and buy Dental Nachos, why would you sell to Nabisco? It's going to ruin your brand. I say, let me hear what they have to say. I'll see what happens next. Maybe shine. Maybe I won't sell it at all. And I'll keep it private practice Dental Nachos. But when people get angry at people who would make decisions that are the same as they would make in those decisions, it's unfair. So we should just talk about it more.
Well, and that's the thing is so if I'm a dentist and there's a dental office down the street and a DSO buys them, that could really hurt me, or it could really help me. They might lose a bunch of their patients in the transition and lose their team, that I pick up a lot of their good team members and pick up half of their patients for $0. Like, it could be the best thing in the world. So there's so many different ways to look at this. And I love that you're always exploring that. And it's abundance mindset, right? It's like, okay, what are all the opportunities here before I go and look at the scarcity 3 things that can go wrong, right? Yeah. So, okay, a question for you. So what is the most impactful marketing campaign on your life?
I mean, one of the things that's really had an impact on me, I grew up in New Jersey. I went to this place called Great Adventure. It was one of the treats to do. I had great parents somehow. And one of the initial girls, from my 19-year-old time, said this to me. She lived from a town a few over. This is probably the nicest thing. My parents would have loved hearing this. I hope I said this to them. So she lived a town over with a single mom, very difficult upbringing. It was not the affluence of where I lived. So when we dated, it was like a little bit of like, wasn't as dramatic as like the other side of the tracks, but it was like her life was very different than mine. Somehow when she went to one of our family vacations, she said, I don't know how your parents did it. You and your sisters and brother could get anything you want and you don't ask for it. I don't know how you did it. It was a mind trick by my mother. It was a Jedi mind trick for her to always feel appreciative, hand-me-downs. Now, we did plenty of nice things, right? We did all these things, but what I will share is Great Adventure was thought of as a treat, right? My mom would say we could go once a season, but my aunt lived close to it, my cousins. So it was always like $40 for the day, which was expensive in the 1980s. But there was a season pass. And one year my aunt said, we're going to buy you season passes. I go, did my aunt win the lottery? She must have made so much money. And I go, hey, Aunt Gigi, that's her real name. How much are season passes? And she said $70. And my 12-year-old mind just freaking blew out my head. Because I said, how does Great Adventure charge $40 once? And we can go 15 times. I go, that would be $600. What I thought was cool about this, which is in the dental membership clubs now, it's in stuff I do at Dental Nachos, is they want to create raving fans of them. And the more times we walked into that park, the more churros we would buy, the more
$10
fun we would
churros,
have.
right? $10
churros. And what they did for us was they authentically let us use their fixed costs as much as we wanted. And what they even did even better, I mean, all this is Sam's Clubs and Costco's, is they made us feel like we were special and part of something. For season ticket passes, you can go to Cinderella early. For season ticket passes, it opens an hour. So to me, that was the most impactful marketing campaign, because I said, I want to make the people that I do business with, work with. At one point, I want to be Michael Eisner from Disney. I like that too.
Yeah.
I want to make people feel this way.
Mm-hmm.
And that is what I strive to do in my dental office. I strive to do in my Dental Nachos world. One of my phrases that I teach the residents is treat special people special. And that comes from that. When someone does $30,000 worth of work and someone only comes for broken teeth, you treat them both with respect. You treat them both with care, but you just set up a system to deal with more of these people because they get you and they like you, and make them feel that way. Whatever it is, giving them swag, the membership club. So that the Great Adventure thing is one of my most impactful marketing tips that were ever used on me in the 1980s in central New Jersey.
That's awesome. All right. So last question, where can people find you if someone wants to get in contact with you or learn more about you? What's the best way to
Thanks for
reach
asking.
out?
This has been an awesome podcast. Love this conversation. I mean, I love to connect with anyone in any way that they feel comfortable with. Our dentalnachos.com website, I have set up kind of like an ESPN thing where people can get content. They can learn about us. I'm a huge fan of Gary Vee, as I mentioned. So my text community code is 215-543-6454. If people text nachos to 215-543-6454, they get a $143 CE prize. Does anyone know or think while you're seeing what the 143 number stands for? My true idol, I've said him in the podcast, not my dad, he's one of those, but 143 was Mr. Rogers' favorite number. That was what he weighed. It also stands for I love you. So if you text in nachos to that number, 215-543-6454, we text that back to you, or you can just check out dentalnachos.com.
Awesome. Anything else that I forgot to ask you, or anything else that you want to share with the group before we go? You did a great job. I love this was the easiest podcast I've ever done. You carried the show.
I appreciate it. I just want to really say I'm grateful for people like you that do this, because I believe podcasts. Live in Center City, Philadelphia. I love history. Podcasts are going to be our connection to the past, and I just love that these conversations that can be consumed, listened to, watched, half this, I think really are just so important. So I appreciate anyone who does a podcast on any topic. They give me free entertainment. They give me free learning. They're a friend in my phone. So I appreciate you doing that.
Thank you.